In the first PUC economics, the importance of statistics has been brought out very beautifully. Then we are also going to talk about the phases of statistics. The study of economics begins with the study of common man. Now let's try to understand the system. What is the system all about? So statistics and economics go hand in hand. Using statistics, we are going to understand the future trends. What makes economics so interesting altogether? Good morning and welcome to the first session on the economics introduction to statistics. This is a very interesting session. Why? Because we are going to learn about the importance of statistics and what it really means when we start studying the subject economics. In the first PUC economics, the importance of statistics has been brought out very beautifully. Why? Because it will try to make us understand what it really means in terms of studying the various factors of economics and how they are arrived at. So what you have to do is that just learn the fundamental concept and take it forward in the way it needs to be done. So having said so, let's have a quick look into what we are going to cover in the topics today. So moving forward, these are the topics that are going to be covered today. Introduction, the need for economics itself. So what's a base on which economics is being talked about? Economic activity. What do you mean by this economic activity? Then we're going to talk about consumption, a very important word. You're going to learn it in economics. This is going to come for you lifelong. So very important word in economics. Then we're going to talk about production, yet another simple but yet a powerful word in economics. We're going to learn about distribution, quite a common word, yes. Statistics in economics, very important topic altogether. Then we are also going to talk about the phases of statistics, the various stages of statistics, the usage of statistics, and finally the conclusion for today. Right, so let's have a quick look into what do you mean and the need for the economics altogether. Now, the study of economics, why it is so important, what makes economics so interesting altogether. Now, if you look here, the study of economics begins with the study of common man in life. So the word common man is very important. Who's this common man? It is you, it is me, it is everybody in this world. All of them are common man. All of them are the common factors who live on this earth. So we are going to study about ourselves. That's where economics begins into picture. So what are we going to try to understand is that we are going to understand the buying, selling and the producing factors altogether. So I try to just deep dive into this word called as activities of daily life. Whatever we do in our daily life, whatever we intend to understand in our daily walk of life, whatever we want to carry out as a transaction in our daily walk of life, that is economics for you. Economics is not a rocket science. Economics is not about any great laws or about any mathematical formulas. Economics is all about you. Economics is all about the factors that govern with you in the daily walk of life. So that is what is economics all about. Saying so, let's try to move forward and try to understand economics better. Now, the economic activity. So there is a system, there is a business, and then there is a monetary value altogether. I'm going to also talk about these things in a very short while, in a short period of time. Now, let's try to understand the system. What is the system all about? Who is the system? Who runs the system? Are we a part of the system? Are we exclusive out of the system? So all these questions will definitely come into mind. System is a form of a factor that is run by the government. So the government creates a system. It's a democratic form, it might be ortho form, it might be any kind of form, an autocratic form, it might be a dictatorship kind of a form, it might be a king's kind of a form, a ruler kind of a form, whatever is that, there is a system that is kept in place. The system is the governing factor altogether. So what does the system intend to do? The system will intend to interact with the business, and the system will also interact with the monetary value. So I'm going to show you the second part, that is interaction with the business and then also interaction with the monetary value also. So the government will try to interact with the business and make you understand that every trade transaction activity that happens in our country happens with the permission of the government. The government is the monitor of all the trade activities. The government regulates each and every activity that happens in our system. So the government will decide what needs to be done at what point of time, what should be the tax rate, what should be the levels at which a price should be fixed. All those factors are being interacted here. So the government and business are interlinked. They are not separate formats altogether. Now, when you say that a price is fixed, a taxation is done, or some value is fixed, on what basis the value is fixed? It is fixed on a monetary value. So the word monetary value matters a lot here. Why? Because every single transaction should have a unit of transaction, a unit of value. So we use the rupee as the monetary value, and every transaction that is being done has got a monetary value. So that's how, if you look into the triangle factor here, you have the system, you have the business, and you have the monetary factor here. So all of them will try to interact and create a whole factor called as country. So that's how the economic activity happens. So there is trade transaction, there are regular transactions, there are macroeconomic transaction, international transaction, so many factors. But ultimately, who are the players? The players are the system and business, which is governed with an economic value altogether. Now moving forward, we're going to talk about this beautiful word called as consumption in economics. Why is it so important? What is this consumption? Before we start understanding the word consumption from an economic standpoint, we will try to understand a very important person called as consumer. This is the most important personality in economics that you need to learn. Who is a consumer? You are a consumer. I am a consumer. All those millions of people who live in this world are consumers. What is the objective of a consumer? The objective of a consumer is to consume, is to take in. It might be white goods, it might be normal goods, it might be any extraordinary goods or luxury goods, whatever is that. The consumer's role is to consume. So the consumer takes in, he buys the goods. He buys the goods from whom? From the producer. So the consumer will buy the goods from the producer and move into a function called as consumption. So if you look into the chain altogether, the consumer will buy the goods and then will start the action called as consumption. So the act of consuming the goods, act of consuming those various types of needs and wants that are being satisfied for a consumer leads to the word called as consumption. So consumption is nothing but taking care of your needs and wants by buying those goods or services will lead to this important word called as consumption in daily walk of life. Now, why do we really need to worry about this word consumption? Is that really so important in economics? Now, if you look at like a country like India, let's try to understand the demographic size, the geographic size itself. It's a vast country with millions of people living, different types of culture, different types of trade activities, manufacturing, so many things going across in our country. So how does the country's economy move forward? Only when the producer produces the good and the consumer starts consuming those goods, the economy does not move up. So the aggregate level of economy, when I use these words called as aggregate level or the consumption, it is nothing but the basic economic activity. When somebody produces, when somebody consumes it, automatically the cycle starts setting into the economic picture, and then we start moving forward with the economy. So the act of consuming goods, the act of consumption is the basic step for any economic cycle to happen in a country. Now, moving forward, production. What is production all about? How do you produce? You need raw materials. So the first step here is raw materials. There is a process. Using those raw materials, you use a step, some process. Using that process, you immediately get an output. So that is your step 3. So the act of production is very, very interesting when it comes to economics. There is some raw material available. Let's take the common example of manufacturing a simple cotton shirt. So here cotton becomes the raw material. That is your first step. You need to get this raw material to start manufacturing. The process is either through power looms or through some handmade activity. So there is some process. Now this process can be either through some manufacturing, some technology. Using that, you come to the output. The output is a shirt. So this is the concept of production altogether. Using a raw material, using a technology, using a method, you arrive at the output. This is the production concept. This is the base for any economics altogether. Why? Because every country is blessed with some form of raw materials. It can be gold, it can be silver, it can be uranium, it can be any metals or any natural resources altogether. But what do you do with those natural resources? How do you convert those natural resources to the benefit of mankind, both with an economic value and a social value? That's where the concept of production comes in. You convert those materials into some meaningful output that can be used by the mankind. So that is where production becomes a very, very important concept altogether. So that is why in economics we stress upon production to the highest level possible. More the production, higher the output, automatically the economic value goes up. Why? Because you are able to sell more, you are able to buy more, so higher economic transactions, higher return altogether. Now moving forward, distribution. Very, very simple word in our life. Moment you see any of those factors calling distribution, what happens? Now, there are producers and manufacturers. So let's try to understand the step 1 here. Who is needed to start distribution? Somebody who produces, only he can distribute. Distribution will start with the person who has the goods with him. So the first person is the producer and the manufacturer. They have the goods with them. They manufacture certain good. They produce certain output. It can be a shirt, it can be a pen, it can be a car, it can be a chemical, any kind of product. These are the people who initiate the first level of manufacturing or production. Moment this is done, we need to start understanding the step 2. The step 2 is who? It goes to the retailers and to the wholesalers. So when you go to these people, they are the person who will buy from the producers and manufacturer, store it at a particular point, and then give it to the step 3, that is to the consumers and to the government altogether. So the concept of distribution itself is a step-by-step process by which we create again an economic cycle altogether. So there is a person who will manufacture, there is a person who will stock it, and then from the stockist it goes to the consumers for the final usage. This is the concept of distribution. Why this concept is very, very important for us to understand is because every economic cycle expects that some activity should keep on happening in the country consistently, then only we will be able to understand the economic growth altogether. For an example or for an instance, let's say that there is no economic activity happening. There is nobody who's even bothered to do anything in the country. Automatically, the entire cycle will just start falling down. We will all become completely stagnant, saturated altogether. So that is why we need a function called as distribution, through which we will be able to take forward the activity and we would be able to grow with the economy of the country. So this is why the cycle is very, very important, and the cycle naturally makes the country to go forward in leaps and bounds and move to the next level of progress. Now, moving forward, statistics in economics. If you start asking me this question, sir, statistics and economics itself are two different subjects. How is that both of them are trying to interact with each other? I would say that the first question that we need to start understanding is the word data. We are filled with data everywhere. And we are a kind of people who always believe in numbers more than words. And economics is also a subject which is driven by numbers, which is driven by facts, which is driven by figures. So automatically the role of statistics comes into picture. Statistics is the tool that is being used by every single economist to analyze the data. That's where we are bringing in statistics. We are not just bringing in statistics to make economic difficult. We are using statistics so that economics can be made easy. Economics can be made applicable everywhere. It can be made understandable to that hundreds and millions of people in the world. What is the meaning of an economic data? That can be transferred. That can be translated only by the usage of statistics. So that is why statistics forms a very, very important part of economics. In any of the policy, now you would be studying about different kinds of policies in your higher classes, like monetary policy or fiscal policy, international policy, trade policies and all that. But everywhere when you study, you will be encountering, you will be trying to address some kind of numbers, some kind of percentages, some kind of facts and figures. What is the tool to analyze it? Statistics. So statistics and economics go hand in hand. They are the systems, they are the methods that will be helpful in economics to make us understand what is the importance of each and every ratio, what is the importance of each and every transactional value, what is the importance of each and every index numbers that governs the entire system of the economy in the country. So at any given point of time, we need to learn statistics, we need to understand the concepts deeply. That will help us to study economics better. Now, moving forward, the phases of statistics. What are the phases of statistics? Is statistics so complicated that it keeps on moving from one stage to another stage? Definitely not. Statistics is actually a very, very simple concept which tries to address the entire situation in different format. Now, let us start with a common word called as data. Data is available to us in any format. It might be in the form of a system, numbers, characters, alphanumeric, so many ways. So what statistics typically does is that first tries to collect the data as much as possible. So if you try to understand statistics, you first need to understand the importance of data. Every time when you read a newspaper, when you read an article, when you read your books, there is some data in that. Try to understand the data. Why? Because it is not just the theory that is running for pages. It is that data that connects us. It is that data that tries to make us understand that something important is happening in that event. So that data is the base for statistic altogether. Now, once you know the data, automatically you will try to question yourself saying that, is it a qualitative data or is it a quantitative data altogether. Now, what is this meaning of qualitative and quantitative? Now, in our life, we always have two options. Option one is that just try to understand what is given to us. Option two is that try to analyze and then understand. Now, what we try to do in many of the cases is that whenever we read some news, whenever we read some articles, we only try to understand the face value. When I use that word face value, that face is F-A-C-E. That means only the basic things. Only we read the headlines and we try to understand the face value. But then when you want to deep dive into the situation, you need to understand data is in two halves, that is quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative data means the data which involves only regarding numbers. Qualitative data means it has got more than numbers, which means there is a connection, there is a link, there are certain correlative factors there. So qualitative data will spend some time in terms of understanding why it is important, how it is important, what are the factors that are needed. So it has got even more important intensity altogether when we talk about this qualitative data altogether. Last but not the least is the pictorial data. This is the most important part in statistics. Why? Because pictorial is the kind of data that we have grown up with. Now, when you were a small kid trying to understand A for apple or B for bat, all this were pictorially depicted to you in your smaller classes. That's how you were able to learn the word and the meaning. So the pictorial data is a very important form of statistics. So whenever you see a pie chart, a histogram, or any form of bar charts or any kind of statistical tool, that's a pictorial representation that appeals to your mind, that appeals to your senses very easily. So that's why pictorial data is a very, very important form of statistics altogether. Now, moving forward, what is the use of statistics? We are going to present economic data using statistics. There is definitely going to be a compression of data which comes into picture, measurement of data, meaningful information, understanding the relationship and prediction. Now you have too many functions when we start talking about statistics, but let's try to understand one by one. Today, if there's going to be a national budget that's going to be presented to you, or you are going to make a presentation about the different indexes, different values in a class, automatically economic data cannot be presented just using words. You need statistics, you need numbers. That is where presentation of economic data comes into picture. Similarly, you need to compress the data. What can be told in 1 or 2 lines sometimes goes to pages. That is why, because people tend to write the same thing again and again in different formats. So using statistics, you can compress the data, you can come to the point by just using certain numbers, using certain formula, and you can tell the people in the most simplest form that this is what we wanted to tell you, this is what we want to show you as an factual data. So that is where compression of data also comes into picture. Now, measurement of data, there needs to be a yardstick, there needs to be a scale through which you can measure data. Now, for example, how do you measure the height of a person? So immediately you will say that in centimeter, in feet. So automatically there is a measurement standard that gets setting up in the economics sessions altogether. So every time when we want to measure a data, we need statistics, because that will tell you how we are going to look into the data. And the meaningful information, after you have measured the data needs to give you something meaningful. The data should not be something that I just kept on reading, but I was not able to get any information out of it. So unless and until the data itself becomes a meaningful factor altogether, you will not be able to use statistics at all. So the usage of statistic itself will lead to the meaningful information altogether. Now, understanding the relationship between the various variables. Now, if you try to understand this word, the variables, that means there are a lot of varying factors that you are going to learn about. Now, you might be using words like X, Y, Z, so many factors. These are all variables that happens in our day-to-day life. But then what is the relationship between them? Now, for example, when you understand the word called as BMI, Body Mass Index. Now, this is a data that you get. But how do you understand body mass index? You refer it to height and weight of a person. So there is a relationship that is created between height and weight of a person. Using that, you are able to tell, you are able to predict the characteristics of that physical body. So the same thing here. Understanding the relationship and then predicting the data. So you are able to tell what are the characteristics of the data, what do they really mean to us. So that is why statistics becomes a highly important tool in economics. So these are some of the factors where we are going to utilize statistics to the maximum level in economics. Now, moving forward, coming to the conclusion for today's class, I would like to make you understand certain factors like the uses of understanding economic policies and the decision-making tools, because that is where we are going to learn the real meaning of economics. Statistics will definitely play a huge role in terms of making us understand the economic principles, the decision-making tools altogether. We are also going to learn about the pricing and availability, and not to forget the most important person, consumer himself. So that is also going to be a very, very important tool where we are going to learn about how the pricing is available, how the consumer is able to adapt to the price, what are the different economic variables that are going to govern him, and last but not the least, using statistics, we are going to understand the future trends. So tomorrow, if you want to be a person who can predict the future, who can predict the trend, the economy of the country, and you want to be in the lead of predicting what is going to happen tomorrow, then you need to understand the importance of statistics. You are going to make use of those statistical tools and going to predict how things are going to happen in your place. And not to forget, solving the economic problem. So you are going to solve economic problems. Now, does economy have a problem altogether? Not exactly. We are just going to try to find a better solution using statistics. So that is where statistics is going to help you and make you understand how you can simplify those problems and bring a rational, bring a meaning to it altogether. So with this, I would like to conclude today's session, and I would like to say a very big thank you to all of you to be a part of this great and interesting session. In the coming session, we will understand the different types of presentation of data, the collection of data, and the importance of statistics and how do they matter to us in the study of economics. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session. Stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you.